Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Brandan and Mary. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and I just got 2 vaccines, both the COVID and the flu vaccine at the same time. So God help me tomorrow when it kicks in and I start to feel like crap for a day, but I'd rather have that than the flu and COVID full blown. So let's watch.
Does Pong know how you don't let me hang out with friends when I was in America? I couldn't even make friends who were guys because you would overthink about their girlfriends. I didn't want you hanging out with guys that I didn't know.
Wow. We've seen controlling, jealous behavior on the show before, for sure. But I don't think we've ever seen anything even close to this. We're now learning that she wouldn't even let him hang out with guy friends on the fear that the guy friends might have a girlfriend, and that is another threat, or the girlfriend might have friends. Wow. It's upsetting. I hope did anyone see this? Because I haven't really been following the discourse around this couple. And of course, as I'm watching this now, the season is almost over. But are people recognizing how wrong this is? How abusive it is? Now, it could be... so if we sat him down and... or if I sat him down and asked him, so do you understand how unfair this is to you? He would say, yeah, I'm guessing. And if I said, well, do you understand this is part of an abuse cycle, of an abusive profile, an abusive set of behaviors? It's okay for her to feel jealous. It's okay to her to be worried. It's not okay for her to use that as an excuse to control you or to find a solution of control. And it's not just control, it's emotional abuse as well, because in fact, I don't talk about this very often, but we saw her behavior when she is triggered by her abandonment trauma, which is real. It's not her fault that she has those triggers. She gets this face on video call anyway, where she's just like, it's this really painful face where she's just like, oh, it's over. I am being thrown away and this is painful and it's happening again. It kind of has that look to it. And it was, 0 to 100 in half a second. Like when he was at the dentist and someone at the dentist office asked him if he'd ever been in love before, and he said he had or something. And her face, she was just like, oh no. You saw me emulate it earlier. I don't know if I nailed it. I'm sure I didn't. But the point is that she, for some abusive people, we all understand the typical profile, the stereotype, if you will, where someone is angry and rageful, maybe even violent, intimidating, threatening, dominant. You better not, or else I'm gonna I'm gonna take your kids away, or I'm going to not let you have money, or I'm gonna punch the wall and imply it's gonna be your head next, that kind of thing. It's the classic presentation, and that is one of the forms of an abusive relationship. But another form is the kind where the person is not dominant in that way, is not threatening or violent, but they will melt down emotionally. They will maybe even threaten suicide. They will throw their hands up and go, there you go again. It's explosive. It's big in terms of the emotionality. It is black and white. And for people in Brandon's position, you love your partner. You don't want them to suffer. You also don't want them to leave you. And so when she throws her hands up and it's like, it's over, and she's in such pain, he might, 1, not want to lose her, and 2, he's like, oh crap, because with empathy, you feel bad for your partner, even if you feel like it's not rational. And so that can become a part of an abusive relationship, and it might not be easily detected. So anyway, if I were to ask him, do you understand it's an abusive relationship? And he says, well, what? And then I explain it, and he says, okay, I guess I can see it. There's a possibility that he would say, well, yeah, I don't like any of this relationship. I don't like any of this stuff in the relationship. I like the overall relationship, but I don't like this stuff. I suspect that once I get in, proximity with her when we're in person, that will drop significantly in terms of her insecurities. A side note, I don't know if that's true. I'm guessing it would help a little bit, but I doubt it would eliminate it. But let's say that he says that, and if I said, well, do you feel safe in the relationship? Do you feel able to leave the relationship? Do you feel safe in general? And let's say that he honestly thinks about it and honestly replies and says, yeah, I feel safe. I'm worried about her, and I intend on trying to make things better. And then let's say I asked him a question and said, well, let's say that this controlling behavior, this jealous, controlling, insecure behavior continues even in person for another year or 6 months. Maybe it's 50% as intense or 25% as intense. How would you feel about that? And let's say that he says, well, I would not feel good about that because I was hoping that it would just go away completely. And so if I were to be in person with her and that behavior continued, I don't know if I would want to be with her. I mean, I love her deeply, but I can't take this for the rest of my life, the way that she reacts. It's so irrational and unfair to me. So the way that I role-played a possible set of responses from him, if they were honest, it's possible that I might conclude and conceptualize the relationship as having abusive behavior from her, but it not being abusive to him. And this is something that I bring up because it's important to delineate that someone can be abusive without it being abusive, if that makes any sense. So if my wife calls me a bunch of bad names and is verbally abusive to me and is doing that out of rage and out of entitlement or something, then it is both abusive behavior and I will feel abused. It will get under my skin. It will live with me for a while. It will cause me to walk on eggshells over time. Whereas if I'm on the bus, or even something not as severe as that, let's say that I'm, at the university, a student calls me a bunch of names, and I know that this student has some psychological issues, or a client calls me a bunch of names, similar situation. I will possibly, I'm more likely for, in that situation, to not feel threatened, to not feel in terror or in fear or afraid of what's happening, or I won't feel unsafe. I might feel mildly uncomfortable, but not, I won't feel terrible about it. And so that's an example of abusive behavior, but I'm not actually being abused. It doesn't mean that it's okay to do that, but it's a much different scenario. So I would have to ask him how he feels about this whole thing, like in the role play that I had. And it is possible that it's abusive in terms of her behavior, but it's not actually abusive because he doesn't receive it that way. So I don't know. Either way, though, it's not a long-term solution to a problem, and it indicates something about her, because it's one thing to have jealousy and to be a little bit controlling, but to go that far, it might illuminate something about her personality, some sort of entitlement, some sort of, well, okay, so I haven't been reacting to a lot of scenes. A lot of things have happened. He arrived, he met the Lolo, the grandfather. He did some farming, and apparently he's going to have to work on the farm. And they made out in the car on the way back from the airport, but he didn't know that that was against the rules. She didn't inform him. And man, do they seem to love each other. She really seems to love him. It was, we see this scene a lot where they meet each other in the airport. And even couples that you think, I don't know how serious that one is, there will be a little bit of affection and some butterflies, I think, just because of the nature of the situation. Think of like a relationship like Erica and Stephanie, if you remember them. There's speculation that although they were a couple online, once they met in person, whatever sort of bond they had, it wasn't big enough to actually sustain them through some pretty minor kinds of issues that they had in the beginning. And so one could speculate that the amount of love and affection that they had prior to meeting each other and going on the show, that it wasn't robust. And so even though that's a possibility in the airport, they had some, crying and kissing. I don't remember the exact scene, but so we'll see the kissing and the crying and the hugging and the butterflies, and we could think, might be, because I'm always hoping that it's legit. I'm hoping, I always hope the best for these people. It's very touching to see people in love and the desperation of two people who have been through a lot of relational traumas, finding each other and being in love. And so she was just, she was so clinging on, and it was, it was cute to see. He seemed a little overwhelmed by the whole situation. But anyway, so then they go home. She tells him, or the brother actually tells Brandan, by the way, in our country, it's a disgrace on our ancestors for you to kiss or to do things without asking for permission from the family. There's no sex before marriage, that kind of thing. Well, I don't even think he knows about that yet, actually. She's talked about it in one-on-one with the one-on-one with the producers, but I don't know if he knows that yet. But anyway, he asked the Lolo for permission to kiss her or hold her hand, and the Lolo said, he asked for permission to sleep in the same room. They did sleep in the same room, and they said, you can't have sex. And she said she wasn't ready, which makes total sense. And he was kind of hoping for some stuff, but they just slept in the same bed. But then because they were sleeping like this, head at different ends, apparently he was kicking her in the head, and the bed was pretty small. I mean, it looked like a one-person bed for, two people are trying to sleep. Apparently he was kicking her head, and then she slept in another room. Anyway, that happened. And then he, Brandan, to his credit, is thinking, well, but we did make out on the way back from the airport, so we need to tell Grandpa. And what she said was, you don't understand, Grandpa. I wrote it down. It was so poignant what she said. She said, Dad is always mad. My dad, she calls her grandfather Lolo, right? It's her, Lolo and Lola means grand. By the way, all the Filipino food is just so great. I want to go to a Filipino restaurant. And so, right, she is, grandparents raised her, right? So Lolo means grandfather, I believe. And she calls him Dad, though, in English. Anyway, so she says, Dad is always mad. And Brandan even said that Lolo has resting bitch face. He said that. Which, I have to say, there's other phrases. You just say, resting disapproval face or resting sour grapes face or something. But that was interesting. I don't know what that means. Does that just mean Dad is a very good father, Lolo is a very good caregiver, but he is a little grumpy sometimes? Or what does it mean? What does that mean? So I bring all this up because I am wondering about her personality, because she did have the very understandable, factual trauma of her parents leaving when she was 8 months old, which is a huge trauma, just tremendous trauma. And she is raised by her grandparents. Well, we don't know what the grandparents were like as caregivers. Let's just take a guess and say that there's some issues there, because there's always some issues. No parent is perfect. Maybe some significant issues that were at the very least modeled to her, that it is okay to treat your loved ones in a certain way without remorse and with a lot of self-entitlement, with a lot of self-centeredness or something. Because there's something going on, it's like this whole rant or tangent. It's not really a tangent. What is it? it's a yammering. The whole thing, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm starting to wonder about her personality, that it's not just the jealousy. The jealousy issue is significant, and we're seeing a lot of it, but that could illuminate something below the water, of, the rest of the iceberg, if you will, of something else that's notable about her personality. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Well, I met them before I met you. And the people you met, you just met them.
Well, to me, that doesn't make a difference.
Okay, so there's that entitlement. That it's interesting that she's being filmed. She knows this, and I know that Filipinas are not like this normally. It's not some cultural thing that is normal. Like all women in the Philippines tell their boyfriends or husbands that they can't have any friends, male friends even. It's just like not a thing. So there's probably cultural elements to it to some extent, but so there's something about her that is notable, that she would feel okay to do this and have no justification for it and no shame about it, really, because she's being filmed. You'd think she would just say something like, oh, I wasn't that bad, maybe make an excuse. She's just like, well, yeah, because I have a logic. And with abusive people, they will be this way. They will twist the world and the facts to make it so that it all makes sense to them. This is where gaslighting eventually emerges, is that abusive people they'll twist, because she makes a point there, right? Of, well, I had my friends, including my guy friends, for many, many years. You met these guys that you met in the States after we met. So I've made my point. This is logic. It makes sense. But to us, what does that have to do with anything? Plus, he moved if I'm getting the timeline right, they have been together for 2 years online together. He moved back to Oregon a year ago, so he was making new friends, I guess, in Oregon. And she said, you can't have friends. I'm laughing, but it's awful. I've specialized in treating perpetrators of domestic violence. I don't know. Well, of course. Well, okay, yeah, of course. I don't know why this was, leaving my mind. That, in a classic stereotypical heterosexual relationship, the male is the abusive person, and he would say, you can't have girlfriends. They wouldn't say you can't have girlfriends. It wouldn't be the common stereotypical profile. That he would say you can't have girlfriends because they might have husbands that you might have sex with, or they might have husbands that would have boys, friends that you, anyway. Usually it's just, I just want to isolate you, which it could be that even for her. But at any rate, that's pretty awful. And then he is bringing this up, which is good. And then she says, well, it's because you met those people after we met. That doesn't make, what does that have to do with anything? I think what she means by it is, well, once we're together, then you don't need anyone else. Or maybe she's saying, once we're together, if you're going to pursue other relationships with other men, then that must mean you're headed towards cheating, because it's, I don't know, is that what she's saying? It's ridiculous, but.
And the people you met, you just met them.
Well, to me, that doesn't make a difference.
To me, it is. Just get to know them. My friends are important to me, and I don't want to lose them because Brandan will get jealous, or they might not get along.
There's a number of other possibilities, which I'm guessing y'all know more about in terms of the facts on the ground, but that she might be highly reactive and vigilant around cheating because she actually cheats or wants to cheat or something. There is a phenomenon like that. I don't think that's true, but it could be. But it doesn't look like that's the case, but who knows? Another thing that can happen that I've seen before is that because she just keeps going after him in a certain way, in this irrational, you could say abusive, controlling, unfair way, the victims will do a lot of things to try to fix the problems. They will say, hey, let me explain it to you, or, okay, I'll comply, but let me do this. And then there's more rules. And then eventually they might actually say, well, screw it. I'll just do what you do to me back to you. So hopefully one day you will know how this feels, or you'll quickly understand how it feels, and you'll stop doing it to me. Because if I do it to you, then you will try to fight back, and I will say, oh, that's interesting. That's actually a pretty good argument. I was making that argument yesterday because you were doing this to me. So do we now understand the situation and you'll stop doing that to me? Because I don't even want to do this to you. So there's a risk of that happening. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.